deficit has actually tripled in the past 18 months. It's gone from $480 billion in the red to about $1.5 trillion. That is a mind-boggling number. As a matter of fact, a few days ago on the radio show, we had a gentleman on from the Tax Foundation, and he said that just to pay off that deficit, that does not account for current levels of spending, just to pay off what he's racked up, taxes would have to go up for those in the 20% bracket to about 32%. And for those of you in the 35% bracket, you need to pay 46% for the next 15 years. How many of you think the answer is to cut spending, not raise taxes? I truly do not understand at that building in D.C., nor at this building behind us. That's a three-letter word they do not understand. C-U-T. It's not difficult to say, but for some reason most lawmakers cannot utter the word cut. They'll find 1,000 ways to impose taxes, and if they don't impose taxes, they lie, and they say, oh, it's not a tax, it's a fee. I'm sorry, they're both three-letter words. F-E-E is the same as T-A-X. So if you do not want to see your children paying 46% marginal federal income tax, continue speaking out. Call Talk Radio. Write your own blog. Stay active, because if we don't stay active, the amount of taxation will absolutely cripple this country, and we'll become the third world country accepting aid from China and the European Union if we're not careful. Okay, enough preaching. The numbers are sobering, and to share more light on that, we welcome a special guest who, out of the graciousness of his own heart, without charging us a dime, came down here today. He is a best-selling author, president of a company called AmeriSearch. He is a nationally known speaker. He is a former congressional candidate. Maybe he was spared by not being elected, right? He has been a guest on the Sean Hannity show. You may have seen him on Bill O'Reilly. This guy's really brave. He even crossed enemy lines and appeared on National Public Radio, and that takes a lot of guts, folks. He is a best-selling author, and by the way, his books are down at the bottom. When you leave, if you'd like to pick up a book or two, or even just drop a 5 or a 10 in there to make a donation to cover his travel expenses, please make welcome Bill Federer. Thank you.
America is still the greatest nation in the world. You know, I'm encouraged when I see what's happening today. You are connecting the dots. If you put some dots on a page and you put a ruler up next to it and you take your pencil and you connect the dots and then you draw out into the future, you can see where it's going to go. You are smart enough to see where these dots connect and what type of country our kids are going to have unless we turn things around. Thank you for being here today. Now, I've written a bunch of books. One of them is 3 Secular Reasons Why America Should Be Under God. Another one called The Interesting History of Income Tax. And another has sold 500,000 copies called America's God and Country, Encyclopedia of Quotations. But in studying history, I have found something interesting. Do you know that there are only 6,000 years of recorded human history? That's it, just 6,000 years. You get any world civilization textbook and open it up to chapter 1. It starts about 3,000 or 4,000 BC with Egyptian hieroglyphics and Sumerian cuneiform on clay tablets. Now, 4,000 BC, 2080, that's 6,000 years. Now, it sounds like a lot, but it's really just 60 people living 100 years each, back to back, and you're all the way back to the beginning of recorded human history. Now, during this time, empires have risen and empires have fallen. Empires have risen and empires have fallen. But one thing stays the same. Power is concentrated in the hands of one person. Whether it's Gilgamesh in Sumeria, or Sargon in Acadia, or an Egyptian pharaoh, or a Julius Caesar, or an Alexander the Great, or a Ottoman Muslim sultan, or a Chinese emperor, or a despot in Europe, or a Aztec Montezuma. No matter where you look in history, the default setting for human government is monarchy. It's sort of like Newton's law of gravity. The smaller mass is attracted to the bigger mass, and so power ends up, no matter which schoolyard you go to, there's always a bully. There's always one king trying to take away a kingdom from another. That is the way world history works. They had a system called patronage. If you were friends with the king, you were more equal. If you were not friends with the king, you were less equal. And if you were an enemy of the king, you were dead. It's called treason. Now, America, because of our 3,000-mile ocean between us and our monarch, the King of England, we had this unique window in time to experiment with self-government. And it worked. We made the people the king and the politicians the servants. You hire and fire them. You vote them in, you vote them out. We took the power of a monarch and we broke it into 3 branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. Like magnets, we pulled them apart from each other, but they want to come together. Sort of like that Lord of the Rings movie where Gandalf tells Frodo, the ring wants to be found. That power wants to concentrate. But we separated it into 3 branches. Then we separated power again from the federal to the state level. Then we tied this Frankenstein up with 10 handcuffs called the first 10 amendments before we threw the switch. Our founders wanted to go to great lengths to make sure power would not concentrate again. There's an interesting story where Thomas Jefferson came back from France, where he was an ambassador. And Thomas Jefferson was having tea with General Washington. And they had just finished the U.S. Constitution. And Jefferson said, why 2 houses? Why a bicameral legislature? He said, it's so cumbersome and it's going to take so long to get things done. And Washington said, you yourself have just demonstrated the brilliance of these 2 houses. And Jefferson said, how is that, General? He said, you have poured your hot tea into the saucer and poured it back before you drank it to cool it. He said, in the same way, we have 2 houses. In other words, we don't want bills to be rammed through in the passion of the moment. We want them to go back and forth to make sure that they only reflect the will of the people. Our founders designed a system of government to work inefficiently on purpose. It was slow to making good changes, but thank God it was slow to making bad changes. So we see something happen. Our founders separated the power of a king into 3 branches, separated it federal to the state level, tied it up with 10 handcuffs we call the first 10 amendments. But over time, it is reconcentrated. After every crisis, there has been a gradual reconcentration of power. Now, when water goes down a drain around the edges, it's slow, but as it gets closer to the middle, it goes faster and faster and faster until it's sucked down in that vortex. So in America, we had a gradual change. And It was great that Lincoln ended slavery, but in the process he concentrated a lot of power away from the states and into the federal government. It was great that Woodrow Wilson got us through World War I, but in the process he concentrated power in the federal